run them 2 hours consecutively.
Okay, well, it's up to you. She's ready.
No, it says Huong Nguyen, first hour, and Julie Dhara.
Yeah, I know she's back to back. So if you want to bring her on now.
Yeah, bring her on.
Okay.
Bring her on.
Send her the link. Okay.
Oh, she should have the link. Oh, wait, I don't know if she does or not. I don't know, man. Oh, we're live. So be careful what you say. Okay.
Hold on. Let me just send her the link.
I got it. I'll send it to her. Boom. You got it?
Yeah.
I'll send it to her too. Confuse her. We're live, by the way.
Okay.
Oh man, I'm having to live in 2 shifts now. Okay, so here's the thing. Okay, I cannot start a show before
1? It's 1 p.m., buddy.
Eastern. No, I can't start a show before 2 p.m. Eastern.
Oh my Lord.
Because I get up. This is weird. These weird things keep happening. There's this one little squirrel that keeps coming all the time. I don't know what's going on with him. So, I get up.
Nuts at you, trying to get you up.
Well, I actually have only been sleeping about 3 hours a day.
Oh dear.
Yeah, this is going on for 10 days. I wore a shirt for you.
Oh, I feel so classy.
I know. I'm glad you're on this morning. So, I get up at 12. I start my shows at 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And then I stay up. Oh, wait. Then they end at 6. Then I talk to Morgan for 2 hours. Then I take a nap. Then I get up at 10:30. And then I work till like 4:30 or 5.
Yeesh.
And then I lay in bed and stare at the ceiling until 6:30. The sun comes up. I don't know what's going on. But I was just having a lucid dream. You look nice.
Thank you. This is what happens when you have good sleep. And I'm still drinking, so it's fine. My complexion's glowing.
God, I know, man. I can't believe what's being demanded of me. My life.
What is demanded of you?
What? My light body's demanding.
Oh, your light body.
It's demanding. Yeah, everything's going away. I can't even eat the way I want. I can't eat hot dogs anymore.
Yeah.
Can't eat hamburgers. And you know what happened? I just realized this last night. Oh my God, I look like I used to look in the mornings when I was drinking. Oh, isn't that crazy? I stopped drinking. I still look the same. I look worse. No. Okay, hang on. Yeah. Okay, what was I going to say?
What is your light body demanding?
Oh, you know what happened? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody this. Morgan's going to die. Okay, look at my hair. See my hair?
Okay.
Okay, so you know Morgan, she has like this ridiculous attention to detail. So when I got back from Sedona, she's like, look, let me see your hair. Well, she said, and she's right, all my hair, like straight across, there was a straight line, no gaps. You see how there's gaps?
Yeah.
I mean, there's scalp. So my hair, so she goes, since you got back from Sedona, your hair's thinning. Like, and then I realized it was. And then I realized last night, because I tapped into it, that something major happened to me over there, and I lost my hair. So my hair's leaving me now. Well, with everything else, fuck it. Just let it all go. Just let it all be gone now.
Well, Soulogy Fest did. Soulogy Fest was. I feel okay. So, if you've been following Todd for a while, you know that he just finished Soulogy Fest last month, and it was on his big bucket list of hosting a huge event like that. And it was quite for you, because I was part of the planning process behind the scenes.
You were beautiful.
I can see it was a very intensive process for you.
I was 100%. Yeah, I was 100% while it was happening.
Yes,
I was 100,000. I was like amazed.
Yeah, you performed beautifully when it was like the Soulogy Fest was happening, and then after, everyone should have seen what it looked like after that.
Well, they did, because you put the picture up. Oh my God, that picture was horrible. You see, that was like, and I don't even care, but that picture was like, oh my God. You know, oh my God.
But I think that's what, you know what, I think it was so eloquently basically showed what it looks like when you're metamorphosing out of a situation like that. Because I tell people this all the time, and it's like one of those things, like childbirth. You can tell people, but they don't understand it until they've gone through it themselves.
Thank you. Yes, please. Yes.
Right? Like how
yes.
intensive it is. And one of the things that it was so intensive is when you're holding space for a guest of 100 people, with the same magnitude of frequency, and it does a huge number on your body, for sure.
Well, I don't even know. Look, this
it looked like you came off of, like, you're trying to like come off of math. I'm not sure what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Pamela says hair contains memory. Losing hair means letting go of old memories. Has happened a lot to me. So I don't know. All I know is that I realized when I checked in last night, I realized something happened to me. I actually feel what happened to me happened after the festival.
Yes. And for me, it usually does happen a couple days after the festival. During the event, when you're doing a gathering like that, for myself, you're on a high, like you're just on cloud 9. And then it's almost like all of that energy gets retracted, and you're back in your own system, and you're integrating. You're basically crashing your system. It's a crash course. So your system gets crashed. Everything that no longer works for you gets immediately leaves the body, and then you integrate all this other. But in the process of that metamorphosis, man, you just look like shit, and you feel like shit, and nothing makes sense. It's literally that process. And because I see the comment of the memory loss. It's kind of like childbirth. After you finish, like, you have beautiful hair while you are basically pregnant, right? Like, the hair doesn't fall out. And then as soon as the baby is born, all of it sheds. It just sheds. It's kind of crazy.
Wow.
So that doesn't surprise me, because you did do something else that you have not shared yet, right?
What did I do?
Festival.
Huh? What?
Remember we talked about this? Because I called you. I called you 2 days after the festival, and I said, "Hey, buddy,
what did I do?
Did this happen to you? Because
is it legal?
Yeah, it's legal. It's all fine."
Okay, I don't care if it's illegal, because I don't really do anything illegal. I don't really do anything illegal anymore.
Well, it's only illegal if you get caught. Anyways, if you
what was?
For myself, I birthed something on the same day that you did, but we didn't talk about it until the memory hit. So in my dream space, I gave birth to a very white baby. Like, this baby had gold curls, bright blue eyes. And in dream space, I was freaking out, because I'm like, why is my baby so white? What child is this? So, and then I connected with you just to do a wrap up of Soulogy Fest. And that's when I asked you, I was like, hey, did you have something weird happen yesterday? And you're like, but you have to tell me first. And I'm like, I'm not telling you first. You tell me first. And then so you said, I birthed the golden child yesterday. I was like, oh.
Yeah. That's right. What day was that?
It was on Wednesday after Soulogy Fest.
Wednesday. That's right. That's when you took the infamous picture, was on Wednesday.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it was after. Yeah, it was in. It was in the evening of that day. So that would have been June 2nd, evening of June 2nd.
That's right. That's right. That was the day. Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday. No, Wednesday.
Wednesday.
You're right.
Yeah.
Hair is connected to kidneys, where your life essence is stored. You gave a lot of your life essence to have Soulogy Fest. Women lose their hair. They give birth to a sharp and sudden drop in progesterone. Well, something's going on. something's going on. I can't eat. I can cook these masterpieces. I'm cooking food like I'm a good cook. Okay. But I mean, I'm cooking food that's like restaurant quality. And then I look at it. I just look at it. I'm juicing four cups like this a day, pure juice, organic vegetables. I stopped consuming certain libations. Not that I was doing it. And that's like, it's crazy because I'm just like, wow, I'm really not. I had 3 spirits from inside of me come and sit down with me on the last night I was there, which I didn't know was going to be the last night I was there. And they basically said, hey, you know who we are? I'm like, yeah, this is kind of weird. And then they're like, we're not doing this anymore. I'm like, really? I knew that was going to happen. And they're like, well, because now I get it. It's coming back. So it's like, oh, you've got major, your body can't handle it. Your body can't handle it. So that morning, they accompanied me, and 2 held my arms back and 1 held my hair as I puked into the commode.
Oh,
I'm like, just so you understand, this is what's going to. Oh, I was a mess. You know that, though. I was a mess. It was embarrassing. But the best part is when I was freaking out and having a meltdown.
Yeah.
I was having a meltdown, and I said something like, oh, my God. And I was like crying. And I was like, I didn't even know what was happening. And I was talking to you. And then I was crying. And I said something like, and my bride's on the other side of the world, and no one likes me, or something like that. And you go, stop it. Don't you know what you and Morgan are doing? Don't you know what you're doing? No, get a hold of yourself.
I know. I'm like, if you were there,
God. It reminded me of my grandmother. My grandmother was like that. My grandmother was like, but she was like that. She was just like, get outside. A bee bit you, here's a piece of ice. Hold it on your head and get outside. She was just like,
pick yourself up.
Yeah. She didn't have any sympathy at all. So anyway, that's the way I like my friends, to be honest with you. I'm serious.
Pick yourself up. Yeah, I just want to say it's really challenging on the physical body when you're hosting events like that. So for anyone that was at the event, I'm curious to see what kind of metamorphosis they went through as well, because as the host, it's a way more intense as the host for sure. But as an attendee, because what happens is you're not responsible for trying to have all those energies not in alignment, I wouldn't say that, but have all those energies express themselves at their best form requires like crazy amount of talent that maybe people are unaware of. That's why a lot of people don't do it, right? So just being able to create a safe space so the energies can circulate at peak performance to be able to put on an event like that is insane. So yeah, you're going to probably feel that for the next 3 months, honestly.
Well, I was planning on doing some other stuff, and then that didn't work out.
Yeah,
that was not been a good idea. Well, I ran the numbers on it. I thought these numbers ain't going to work. We're going to have to like really work hard. And I'm like, I'm not doing this, plus things just didn't add up. But that's really true. I don't normally, I've always been one of those people that whatever I did wasn't enough, right? Like I have really, mellowed out, but especially back in the day, I mean, I was killing people in my industry. I mean, there was no question who ran it was just, but still it was never enough. And so, this experience with Soulogy Fest, I came out of it and I'm like, wow. I wasn't like I was satisfied. It wasn't even about that. It was just like, holy shit, do you know what you just did? Like I don't typically say, wow, look what I did. I don't. But when I left, they told me, look what you just did. I was like literally pulling out of the driveway, last car, there was one car behind me. That was it. Yeah. And I'm pulling out and I could hear the grandmothers and the grandfathers. They were on each side. And they're like, you just held space for 100 people plus plus. They said
But the
plus. So I
online.
guess, and they said, you know, everything went through you, and next time it'll be somebody else. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know, but yeah, I was just like, wow. And then later, what happened was, because see, what happened, I didn't know this. So Morgan went into quarantine, and she was going in for a deep dive, which ended up being what I would say was the energy of, what would this be? So this would be whatever that thing was at the end of the month. You know, I don't know what was going. Oh, there was an eclipse, and then there was something else after the first of the month. But anyway, she always goes early, so I knew something was happening. What happened was we were doing the polar opposites. I'm over here lit like Tinkerbell, you know, and she's over here totally stripped to nothing.
Yeah. And like,
While this is happening,
yes.
yeah, while it's happening. Now,
Yeah.
I knew at the time, because I was more rational and balanced, I knew what was going on. And I was holding space, and, you know, we were just, and I could only talk to her after the festival, 11, 12 at night, when I could use the internet. So this was happening. And then what I didn't know, because we talked about it afterwards, she goes, you know, that I sent all my energy over to you, right when you got there. And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been nice to know. That would have made me feel good. But then again, that's how this goddess energy works, right?
Yeah.
It does stuff. Like my grandmother was that way. My grandmother was that way. She would do stuff and she would never tell anybody, you know, whether it be for a stranger or for a family member.
Yeah.
You know, so but anyway, the reason I brought that up is because when I was doing the Soulogy Fest, I mean, I'm pretty much made to do stuff like that, right? I mean, that's just part of my makeup, but I felt different. I felt like, wow, I feel like something, like I can't even explain it. And then when she said that to me, I said, oh, well, that makes sense. Because I literally felt like both of us, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes.
It's been a very traumatic experience. I'm losing my hair.
You made it. I am so proud of you.
Look at this. I mean, this is crazy.
Christy, Grace, and Ty, and Jade.
Yeah.
You guys made it. I was cheering you guys on from this side of Canada, all happy and safe in my bubble.
And Franco and Kimberly made it from Toronto, which is crazy.
Perfect. Yes. There's lots of bureaucracy crossing that border.
I know. Look, so everything's working out okay. You see here? So,
nice.
Yeah. So, well, those aren't new, but they're going to work. And we're just going to, I finally realized you're never going to have, I just woke up, by the way. You woke me up. So,
I had to call, can you believe it? I had to call Todd to make sure that he gets up in time for me.
I set my alarm, but I was so out of it. You know, I woke up with slobber out of my mouth and all that. No. So I finally realized, okay, well, you know what? You have to do what you have to do with what you have now.
Yeah. And you know what? That is perfect. I think that's one of the things about letting go is understanding that in the modern world, I think there's way too much emphasis on perfectionism, which actually holds you back because there's a lot of limitations with perfectionism.
It's disempowering.
Right? Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's just like you realize that you can't, there's never a good time. You're never pretty enough. You're never skinny enough. You're never fast enough. You're never smart enough. The only thing that is enough is this moment. So what you have to do is take what you have and just understand. And it's so empowering when you're like, this is good enough. You know, for this moment. Yeah. This is good enough for Todd Medina. Rough, but at least you showed up. Like the most important thing is you showed up.
I agree.
So it's one of those things that even your first Soulogy Fest, there wasn't a huge team. We had a couple core anchors that were a specialist in their area that basically assisted you through. But for the first run, it was beautiful.
It was flawless, and everybody got paid.
Yes.
That's what I was happy. I was happy. All the volunteers got paid. Well, and the reason I'm showing you this is because that's funny. But anyway, because God damn it, you know, I mean, well, anyway. So that I'm going to be downloading. I'm downloading the 40 hours of material, and then I'm going to start editing it, and I'm going to start sharing it. And it's also that 40 hours is really kind of the foundation for the expansion of the network, channel 1 and channel 2. So I was hoping to have 2 brand new computers dedicated just to that, but I have 2 used ones, and I have this one. So I'm just going to do what I can with what I have until we can figure it out.
Yep, and that's the you can, even if you here's the funny thing. So
You're funny.
In the personal life, I do have a lot of structure. That's how I optimize in a structured environment. But I also get to a point in the structured environment where if shit starts falling apart left, right, and center, I can immediately pivot and say, fuck it, let it go. And just allow the universe to surprise me. I think it's what I've been learning the last couple of years, especially as a small business owner. You kind of have to do that, right? So even up to like this morning, the funny thing is this morning we had a big promotion for my business, and all the team members were up right at 7 monitoring everything to make sure that, because it's tech related, to make sure that it goes smoothly. And the first transaction comes through, it says failed payment. And I'm like, oh my fucking God, are you kidding me? The first transaction failed. We can't even take money. What is the point of this? We put in a year to get our platform to where it is today.
Wow.
So I was up at like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. IT team was there. Marketing was there. My e-commerce manager was there. And so, all the texts are flying, right? They're like, payment failed. We can't take money. And I'm like, okay, break open the Prosecco, start drinking. And I'm like, it's okay. We got this. Just let me ground myself. So then that's what you have to do. You kind of just have to let go. So once I kind of stop having a hissy fit, this is at 7:30 in the morning. I took a deep breath and I'm like, okay, this is not meant to happen. That's totally okay. I don't need to be attached to this, even though I spent a year and a half working on it. So deep breath. And then the e-commerce manager came back and she's like, it's okay. It's just the customer's card that failed. All other payments are going through. So it's one of those things where it's just like, you can plan all you want, but you just need to what's needed.
And that's the other thing. Yeah, you're right about that. And I remember back in the day when I was more into that. Well, when I was like that, the other thing that was natural to me was remaining calm and cool.
Yes.
Like everybody would be freaking out, and my whole team, there's a lot of people too, a lot of locations, and I would just be okay. And I think that's just a natural thing, but at the Soulogy Fest, it was kind of like that. I never got rattled. How could you, man? It was just like walking in a big, I don't know how to explain it. It was just a big bubble of
hormones.
No, it was
like on this side of the screen.
I know, that's what you were telling me.
Intense bubble of way too much estrogen. That's what it felt like.
I didn't see that. I just saw, the only thing I saw there, which was beautiful, was Don and and Don. McManus and Don. Don that was with Terry. I can't remember his last name. Yeah, they ended up having, connecting. Well, it's true. Well, there's more than one love story, though, I know about, but I'm not privy to talk about it.
Oh, maybe you could do a side hustle, connecting up people at these festivals.
I know, right?
Then you can do stories after the fact.
Yeah, I really do want to. I want to get this footage out here. Oh, Don Gilly. Yeah. So what else? You look fantastic, though. Maybe it's because you didn't. Why does your hair look so nice? Your skin looks great. My hair.
I didn't hold space for 100.
Is falling out of my fucking head, man. I mean, like, that's crazy. My grandfather died at 73. He had 7 black hairs, and his hair was like thick.
Yeah.
He said it was from the Vitalis that he used to use, but I'm not putting that shit on my hair. Whose future Juju be? Oh, Julie. That's Julie.
Oh,
Julie, you can come on anytime you want to. I put both your names on the title. I'm running a 2-hour broadcast.
let's bring her on.
Yeah, she can come on whenever she pops in.
I think she should be online, so she should.
Yeah, she is. I saw her. She made a comment.
Okay.
You can come on.
There was another comment that asked if there was any way to kind of go through the transformation a little bit with more ease and grace. There is. When I was holding space, the easiest way for you to immediately do it is to get back in nature, sink your feet into water, into the land, into whatever, and just dump it. Like, just ask them to dump it. Because what happens is if you're in a modern setting, like a city or a town, there's the grounding energies of just basically the ease and grace part of it is just so you're not conflicted. So anytime you are conflicted, like you want to hold on to things that make you feel valued, even though they're not good for you, that's when the trauma and like all the uncomfortableness and physicality basically manifests itself, right? So when you go into nature, for myself, I'm just sharing with what works for me, is when, and I do this, Todd knows this because he's a personal friend and he sees me on Facebook camping every weekend.
Glamping. You're glamping. Glamping. I learned that word. You know I learned that word, right?
Yeah, you just learned it. Yes, because we have a fully loaded trailer. Little Betsy's like 26 feet, fully loaded.
Little Betsy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a in Texas, they would call that Little Betsy because everyone's trucks here are penile extensions, you know?
Yes. So that's what I do. I would go out and I would just spend an hour quietly just being with nature. That is
I've never heard of that. I have this forest back here, so I'm going to have to go out there and just take a dump, right? That's what you said dump everything.
Well, I said you dump metaphorically, but if you feel like dumping literally, like whatever works for you.
Oh, God.
You probably would feel really good, you know. You should do that.
No. Have you been having weird stuff happen? I mean, like, have you been? Do you know that in Sedona, I had the thing with the owl, right? Remember? Okay. Then I had a thing with 12 wild pigs.
Yes, you were telling me about the pigs.
And then I had a coyote walk up in downtown, well, you know, in the middle of the night, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning.
I feel, you know what it is? I feel like for yourself, part of your dumping or letting go, whether you're aware of it or not, is actually your lineage, because you have a really strong connection to the animals, right?
I know.
Just based on your lineage. Like a lot of your guardians are in animal form.
Yeah, true. That's true.
So I'm feeling like that's probably just basically your heritage that is part of the dump.
Yeah.
So for me, that it's one of those things where it's just like you said, you had 12 wild pigs. I'm like, well,
12.
That's awfully specific.
I know. And they told me, because when they walked up, I said, what the hell? And then they're like, hi. And I said, do you have a message? And they said, well, first of all, there's 12 of us. So I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. And there was 12. I agree with you. The animal thing is really big. And the birds are going crazy with me. I even want to talk to Morgan on the phone. They're going crazy on her end. And I can hear them and I understand them more now than I ever did. But but the only thing is the coyote. Like this whole thing that happened with Anubis.
Yeah.
And the first night I left, I stopped in Oklahoma at this little mom and pop RV park. Open the door, first thing that happens, all the coyotes start going crazy. It happened to me in Sedona about 4 times.
Wow.
And then of course the last night I'm there, the coyote walks up. Like, you know, I could have pet it. It was like, but and so there's something about that that's connected to that essence, the trickster, you know, but it's And then somebody wrote yesterday, this friend of mine who's really connected. She's very unique in Hawaii, and she said, because she saw that Anubis post I put up, and she said, I'm not saying this is true about me, but she said, when that happens with Anubis, he's the what is it? He's like the guardian of higher self-integration, basically. So she said it was a great sign. It sure felt like there was some finality to it
With the animals?
with
Or
Anubis,
mm.
because that's the 7th trip I've taken, and he showed up the first one. And,
so let's go back. Okay, so I don't know if everyone knows about your ancestral lineage. So did you want to share that? Because I do want to loop in something for you that's a little bit on a bigger collective.
Yes, I love when you do this stuff. It turns me on. Okay, so now what did you ask me? What?
Pay attention.
No. You said do you want to talk about my ancestral lineage? You're talking about my blood lineage?
Your blood lineage.
My blood lineage is
not your galactic lineage.
Your
human heritage.
My human heritage is about if you break it up right, it's like 50% Spanish, as in Spain. My mother's family was some of the first settlers from Spain to Texas. They're in the Texas history book. And then about a quarter would probably be Mexican, or maybe a little bit more than a quarter, which is Indian and Spanish. And then there's a quarter that's my grandfather was first generation, but his people were from Syria or Lebanon. So it's like a quarter, Arabic.
When did your family immigrate to the States?
On my father's side, the first ancestor was from Spain, and this is on my grandfather's side, and his name was Javier Salinas. It was in the 1600s.
Oh, wow.
It was like 1629 or something like that. He went to Mexico, and then that family line met my grandmother's line, which was on the Mexican-Texas border. My grandfather used to call her Papoose. I used to piss her off because she had a lot of Indian. So she was a traditional Spanish and Spanish and Indian mix. And then on my mother's side was the matriarch was direct from Spain, and then the father was from Syria.
Okay, so you are you third generation?
Of what? Am I? No, I'm like on my mother's side. I'm let's see, it's my great grandmother, because they all went to the same school, which is crazy, right? Mm-hmm. My great grandmother, her name was Janie. She had green eyes and red hair. Right? Oh wow! Yeah, and so and she was like a very strong lady. But anyway, so she was her. My great grandmother, who I knew, she was born in 1890, and then my grandmother, my mother. So fifth generation.
You're fifth generation
on that side, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the others though. So my grandfather was from the Middle East, or his family's from the Middle East. He was born here, and either his mother was born in Mexico, or she was born in the Middle East. But so he was either first or second generation. So it would make me third, right?
That's what. Didn't I say that?
I don't know.
I'm just
gonna drink bleach. I've had it.
You're done.
Don't recommend that.
So in Canada, we are kind of going through a huge collective. It looks like a Canadian shift, but it's not. It's actually North American shift. But the biggest difference is the North American shift is the history of the States has always been documented aggressively. Yeah. So your history has always been documented quite accurately in the books of the colonialism that had to basically manifest itself in order for you to be a third generation American right now, right? So for Canadians, we followed the same kind of history. The only difference is our history was buried. So the violence and the bloodshed in order to have Canada where Canada is now was buried. So one of the things is growing up, my best friend is actually Cree. I grew up with a Cree family. And one of the things when I was younger is we would take turns spending our summers on each other's like places. So my girlfriend at the time, she lived in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. I would spend my summers there, and then she would come to basically Vancouver and spend summers here. So we would alternate. And I didn't realize how much of a blessing it was until I was in my early 20s, when all the weird stuff that happened, which was I thought was normal. When in my 20s, I realized it wasn't normal. It was not everyone experienced these things. So when I was on the reserve, I was often mistaken as being Cree because my skin's so dark, right? Like wherever I go, I'm the indigenous population. I could be vacationing in Mexico in the pool and people would be like, hey, can you get me a drink? And I'm like, I'm not working. I paid to vacation here. So in the same thing has happened. So when I was on my girlfriend with always growing up with my girlfriend, I learned a lot about the Cree Nation. And one of the things I always knew, and I didn't know that it wasn't common knowledge, was that the Cree Nation, like all the Indigenous people across Canada, has gone through a brutal genocide that was just buried. God. So one of the things that happened, I knew 2021 would be big for my Native family. I call them my Cree family, because a lot of healing would come up. And I was talking to Joyce, who's actually I call her my Cree mother. And I was like, this year is going to be big for you. She's like, yeah, I know, because I'm going to retire. I'm like, no, there is going to be such a huge collective shift for healing for basically the Indigenous people of North America. Wow. Just in Canada is a little bit different. So what's happening is, if you have been watching on the news, you will see they're basically uncovering all these unmarked graves.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah.
It's basically the history of what the violence that had happened on Canadian grounds was always buried. So now it's coming up for review. One of the things that happens in the Cree Nation when huge healing has to come up like that is there's a big surge of all your ancestral animal totems come out for you. And
is that what's happening?
So that's why I'm wondering if that's the lineage that you are experiencing, because even for myself, I don't have the animals talking to you in the same manner, but because I'm connected through my Cree family, I have information downloaded for them. And when I was talking to my Cree mother, I was saying it's not, she's like, I'm like, you're going to reveal by the end of this year, you're going to find 25,000 bodies that were unaccounted for.
You got this intel?
Yeah.
Wow. So, see, this is crazy, because since I was a little kid, and I'm talking like first grade, when I went to elementary school, we had the bookmobile and all that, and I started reading and it was all historical, and a lot of it was Native American. But anyway, what I'm saying is, and I did it my whole life until I stopped reading, about 40. But so I'm very familiar, and I totally resonate, and have had past life experiences, whatever you want to call it, Native American. But I never thought about Canada. But you're right. There's nothing in the Canadian history that's put out there that talks about what happened, because obviously the same thing happened. It was the same continent.
It's the same thing. Yep, the same thing. So basically, the first, it was colonialism, right? And like I said, it's well documented in American history. In Canada, I guess because the culture is so polite, it was buried. So there is a lot of, they're going to unmark so much history. People are going to go into huge shock.
Yeah.
But that shock wave is what's going to cause all the healing to basically manifest itself. Like it's kind of like popping the zit, right? Like you knew that bacteria was below your skin. You knew you were never taking care of it. You just tried to ignore it. And now what is happening is all the animal spirits are helping lift that up for awareness, observation, and basically clearing out that so that you can heal. And for Yeah, it's
So
one of
that
those.
makes sense that with the animal thing, because the animal thing has gone crazy since I got back from Sedona or on the way or something. But I was telling Morgan last night, so now I'm up here in her old office, and every single day, okay, they're outside of this window, there's a tree. See here? Let's see if we can show you. See the tree? That's the mother tree on the property. Right on the other side of it, down there, is an interdimensional portal that's been talking to me since I got here. And then on the way back from Sedona, it was talking to me. It's like, hey, we got work to do. And I'm like, why are you talking to me and I'm not even there? Now, until 2 days ago, I've been here over 2 weeks. I haven't even walked outside to the forest. I haven't even walked downstairs. I couldn't. I was like integrating or something was happening, right? Losing
Yeah.
my mind. But I keep being told that you're going to be working in this interdimensional portal. Now, this interdimensional portal is the only thing I can describe it that comes close is the energy of Sedona. So it's not a Sedona. Don't get me wrong, but the energy that's accessible or present in that interdimensional portal is everything like Sedona. So it's angelic, galactic, off universe.
Yeah.
So you got all these different things. And then at the same time, the animals, since I've been back, like every day, it hasn't happened on this show yet, but you watch it'll happen. Every day a different bird comes over here and starts talking to me. Yesterday it was a blue jay, and he got on this funky looking limb and he's like swinging back and forth. Like a bird doesn't even do that. You know, it was like the limb was pointing down and he had his feet on it and he was swinging back and forth, like, and talking to me. And I'm like, what the hell? But yeah, it's been happening. And I'm not the only one talking about it. So there's a connection to the animal totems and the revelations that are occurring. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, to basically the North American continent. So it's basically history. In order for us to move forward, it's one of those things that it needs to be brought up and acknowledged. And it's really hard, right? Because right now in the media, it's really heavy. A lot of people are triggered by the information, but they don't know what to do with it. So some people do different things. I mean, I have a member on my team, and she's going to wear an orange shirt on Canada Day to protest Canada Day, and because it's going to make her feel better. But it's one of those things where it's just like, it's not about, if protesting makes you feel better, that's fine, as long as you don't stay in that warrior narrative. Because one of the things that happen is when you go through a huge genocide of a culture like that, which Canada has gone through, and bury it and try to celebrate nationalism, which is coming up pretty quickly, you're going to time loop the whole collective. So we're going to go into, and Julie, this is a good segue. You're going to go into a time slip, which actually happened for Julie and I on the same day last week, where I was trying to figure out what was happening. And because we're kind of at a choice point where we can continue to move through conflict in a warrior mode by making people righteous, where there's one winning party and one loser party, and there's no outcome in the middle, right?
Right.
So the losing party basically needs to be hushed or buried. So the choice point for the collective right now is acknowledging that these traumas and injustices happen to a huge group of people, but not to engage at it in a level that we did before. Because if we do that, we are basically time slipping back to duality.
It needs to be seen, right?
Yeah, it does need to be seen, but you have to kind of engage at it at an observational level, where you're like, you acknowledge that this had happened, and this is an experience that as a nation, everyone has, like it or not, you need to be aware of it. And moving forward, we have to come to some reconciliation where it's not about warrior mode. It's not about justice in the traditional sense, where we want to send all these evil players off to jail or whatever your justice is. But it's more about transmuting that entire narrative. So last week, well, Julie and I, we echo each other a lot. So I called Julie my East Coast sister because I live on the West Coast. And I'm like, hey, did this happen to you? It's really weird.
It's
So
really
what
weird.
happened to me midweek last week is I went through, you know, when you're just about to fall asleep, I know everyone has this sensation. You're just about to fall asleep and then you slip and it feels like you're falling. So your whole body jerks like this, right? You're, whoa, and it feels like you hit a canyon. And in real life, you move like literally half an inch. So that's what I was doing. I was hyper focused on the project I was working on, like total human 3D focus. We're talking about like measurements, really like at a technical level. And that happened. And I felt like totally not dizzy. I could feel the slip and I knew exactly what it was. And it was, I haven't felt those before. So I'm not going on previous like basically experience. I just knew immediately what it was. It was a time stream slip for the collective where, and then I realized it was connected to the children. Like and Julie has been doing a lot of work with children on her side, and also all the American founders, and basically all of that on her side on East Coast. So on for right now, and this is connecting back to the golden child. The golden child cannot actually, so that timeline slip, that's a choice point. So we're gonna let's just say that the golden child is actually a choice point for humanity, right? Where we can actually create out of love instead of creating out of fear. That is the biggest golden timeline for humanity right now, where you do things out of expressions of love and freedom, freedom codes, not through limitations. So we went through a huge time slip where humanity went into shock and got righteous and wanted to hold everybody accountable that caused all this harm for the genocide that happened to the children. So it took me a couple days to figure out what was happening. But I think what needs to happen now is trying to move us out. So the golden child timeline that comes into play is healed, and then creation happens from there.
Yeah. So it's not about retribution. That's weird. And this happened last week. So while this was happening to you, part of what was happening to me was I was laying on the couch and half the time I just stare at the ceiling. So there was 100 hours, 50 hours of staring at the ceiling, 25 was doing this, and 25 was actually watching some programs. The problem was I couldn't find anything, but I ended up watching there's a movie called Dark Legacy. It's the best JFK assassination doc that's been out for years and years. Anyway, this guy did a second one, and he did a second one called Dark Legacy 2, I think, and it's about the death of John F. Kennedy Jr. And it's as good as the first one. And there's some pretty interesting stuff that happened. And I won't get into it, but it sounds like this was not an accident. There's no fucking way if you watch this thing. But anyway, I won't get into the details of that. This is about what you were talking about. So the other thing that happened was I found myself watching things that I haven't been watching because what's the point? Even like what I just talked about a second ago. Well, then I came across, and I watched several documentaries, and they all had to do with injustice. Stuff that I'm familiar with, though, you know. But then I watched this show. It's a documentary, and I can't remember the lady's name. It's the name of the documentary, I think. Anyway, in 1952 in Live Oak, Texas, Live Oak, Florida, which is about like Live Oak, Texas. We're talking deep, deep, deep South. 1952, serious segregation going on. White doctor in a small, close-knit town. Black female patient walks in one day and blows his head off. 1952 in Florida, you're going to get hung if you're black.
Yeah.
Okay. You just don't do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, what ended up happening was now it's the lady ended up living to 1992. So she lived 40 years. She spent quite a bit of time in the criminal part of the asylum or whatever institution. But the story came out The story came out that this guy was a really bad guy. He had forged the will of the biggest property owner in town, that he was his heir, and he was his doctor. He was going to kill him. Okay. He was raping and had fathered a child with this black lady that shot him. There was all these revelations, but it's exactly what you're talking about. So now they're talking to people 50, 60, 70 years later in this town that this happened 70 years ago. And it was all about bringing the stuff up so people would know what was going on. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy because the effect it had on people. I'm talking about people like one guy was the last living juror from the trial, children and grandchildren of people, the story's been passed down. But the whole point of it was that it was like this painful cleansing, and all the people were acknowledging everything that occurred, regardless of their prejudices and biases. It was exactly what you're talking about. It was just to be seen, Well,
that's really the thing. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Fun conversation.
What's happening, Julie? Why is it that everybody looks great except for me? I mean, Huong looks like she just came off of the Starship Enterprise, and you look fantastic. Like you're going to be a centerfold in Cosmology magazine this coming month.
Well, thanks, Todd. Go back to you. So that's the way I popped on to say that's the thing, right? The awareness. It's like, so what do we do then, Huong? That's the conversation. Like, what do we do then as, colonizers living on this land with white skin? Like, and what do we do? And it's
I'm going to keep listening. I've got to go do something real quick. I'm going to keep listening. You keep talking.
Awareness is really the thing.
It is.
Like we hold space for it and watch. And this, hi. I didn't know Tom was going to slide away.
Yeah.
It was cool. And maybe I'll wait for the galactic part for when he gets back. But
we'll just keep going. He may
keep
not
going. Okay. Well, this is what Todd and I had a nice conversation with Todd, not on air, when we were booking my dates. And I was talking about the Soulogy Fest piece. But I wanted Todd to say his last name correctly. Maybe the JJ and Desiree Hudak. Is that how you say that? Say again? Hertak. Thank you. And so last summer, I was really, I know that I've been working with the Dove energy across the U.S. and the peace codes and freedom codes for sure.
Yeah. As
a good worker and gatekeeper. And this is where you and I connect often. And for sure, the children is a huge part of it. And, I think it's something like, I don't think either of us share about like publicly that much. We just kind of do it in our own spaces. Right. And like, working with, whether it's kids in cages at the border or, kids, all the kids that are in peril around the world. And then the souls of them that has happened to. So when you talk about the land in BC that, the schools.
Yes.
And so it's like souls that need freeing, that are maybe like trapped in a fear space or trapped on that land, and so, or some facet of them. So anyway, in last June, I was really called to keep looking at the map that's in the Keys of Enoch book, and the Dove map. And every time I found it online, I was like, it's just kind of fuzzy. You can't really read it that well. And I was like, all right, it's time for me to buy this book. So I bought it, and it was around right after George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis. Okay. That was huge for you. Big part of it. And so that was in Minneapolis. And I was like, there's something on this map that is that. And when I looked and I got the book, and now I know why all the online copies are so smudgy, because the one that's actually in the book is pretty smudgy, because it came out in the 70s, he did it like on probably vellum, in pencil. And
come on, JJ Hertak, are you
like a telephone game, it's a copy of a copy.
But you need a clear copy.
Or maybe he would give us permission to post. I can post a picture of it, but I guess we'd ask him permission. It's copywritten. But there's a sphere in the dove, in the body of the dove, so the center line of the USA. And it's fascinating that Todd just brought up the JFK assassination in Texas. Like that was another add-in to me in Dallas. But that line, like the nose of the dove, the cone of the dove is down, by Galveston, Texas, coast of Texas, Medina country.
Okay.
And the straight line, like the backbone, if you will, of the dove, or the central channel, runs up the center of the continent. And then there are the two wings on either side. So the George Floyd thing and that whole activation. And then for us, I don't know if you've heard about that whole Juneteenth situation. Like that points us down to Galveston. So the USA just declared a national holiday.
Okay.
For Juneteenth is the last slaves that were, slavery had been abolished, but there were some holdouts.
Okay.
And, you know, anyone that could keep people in slavery did, right? So the last like freedom code for that happened in Galveston, Texas on June 19th. So that's Juneteenth. The other, I don't know the date offhand, but I think it was June 5th, the George Floyd thing last summer. So there's just this whole like electric current up the central continent. And when you talked about Saskatchewan, like I'm sure it goes right up in through there.
Well, the interesting thing is the first reveal on Canadian soil happened in BC, which is the West Coast, if you're not familiar with Canada.
Yeah, I've been following it closely.
Yeah. And then and that sent people into shock because it was, I think it was just over 200 unmarked graves happened that they discovered. Right. But then yesterday they revealed in Saskatchewan, it was another massive burial ground, and it was 700, just over 700. So yeah. It was weird because even my husband's like, oh, they found over 1,000 unmarked graves, right? And I was like, oh, that's nothing. There's going to be 25,000. And he's like, how do you even know that? I'm like, I don't know. That's just what came in.
Doesn't he know he's married to
oh, Todd, our husbands don't pay attention to what we do. No, they just kind of like nod and eye roll, and they support us and bless us, but they don't like.
Chris is very grounded. So he constantly needs to be reminded, like there's always extra information that comes through. And sometimes he uses it to his favor. Most of the time he doesn't listen. So that's fine. But one of those things is, so going back to the freedom codes. So I know, Julie, you've been working on it for quite some time. And the freedom codes, what actually it is for humanity, it's not about the freedom codes, I feel. It's more like basically the creation codes, full creation codes, because you are unlimited, right? Before we had limited creation codes where you were basically making decisions based on what is the best of the crappy options, which is not a great way to live, right? So going back to the children, the golden child timeline, all of those, even the oppression for basically the Black community, and our community is the Indigenous community up in Canada. All of that is basically just oppression codes, regardless of what your skin color it is. It just happens to be oppression, right? So it would be, I sat on it for a while because I'm like, okay, now that all this information is here, now what? You know what I mean? Like, what do we need to do as a collective to move out of warrior mode, making one person wrong, the other person right, feeling vindicated? Vindication is just another extreme of righteousness, right? Like, how is it possible that we can instill peace within everything that has happened without going into the point of recreating? Because that's very powerful energy. Vindication is super powerful, but I don't know if that is actually going to be something that is part of true creation codes. Like, do you need to be vindicated if you are master of your universe?
No.
Right? So if we engage in that, then we are time slipping back to basically what had happened to all the different groups that were oppressed. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's just like, so what is the next step? I'm not entirely sure, but it definitely is not to feel like fight or protest or wear an orange t-shirt. Like, I don't feel like
an orange t-shirt. I don't want any more of those orange things.
Yeah. It's one of those things.
It's like that wings. It's, if we go back to the wings of the dove analogy, it's like I've been saying this for years down here. The political climate is like, you're just two wings of the same bird. Like, if you're the bird of peace or you're the bird of war or the bird of strife. You know, it's like that you're just counterposing. Like that's not where the balance comes. It comes from the unified state.
Yeah. I
And
think
like merging into the middle.
yeah.
Can I pop in about, because you guys are
Mhm.
having such a beautiful, and it does tie into the galactic piece about
Yes.
Soulogy Fest and like how this all sort of ties in together for me.
Mm.
Is so, you know, Todd, you picked like the squeeze weekend to have your event. If we look at the skies,
Yeah.
because we had the lunar eclipse on May 26th, and then you
Right.
had your thing, and then there was a solar eclipse on June 10th, and that middle point, that June 4th point you talked about,
Yeah.
is that's the middle point between those two sky events, and a lot of that, like bringing up the shadow piece, and that. So I wrote in a comment when you were talking about what you and Morgan are doing, or even the Soulogy Fest piece. I wrote center and anti-center. So it ties into what's happening today in the sky too, because right now, I don't know, I'm so in the moment with you. I forget which thing is, but something's happening up there. So the center, if we're here on Earth and we look up at the dome of the sky, if we want to look towards the galactic center, we'd look towards the Sagittarius constellation. And over in that part of the sky is like where we'd see the core. So whenever you talk golden child, to me, I see it as the line of liquid light that is source codes that are the core of the galaxy.
Yeah.
That thin filament of that's what Tung's talking about too.
Yes.
So golden child energy to me is that golden core light.
Yeah.
Pouring it down the center of a continent, pouring it down the center of a human body, pouring it down the center of the planet, the center of the galaxy. And then does everyone have easy access to it? It's like the access point. It's like, so we're getting rid of the gurus and the teachers and the intermediaries in that realm, you know, and then the lineage based, and then the oppression, we have to merge the oppressor and the oppressed, really. Like it's that force code come in. So the hair thing, Todd, to me, because I didn't pick up on what's happening for you, but I've been going through for the last year for sure, like big part, it seems like I have a lot of hair, right? But my hair leaves my body in vast quantities. But it's like the pores of my hair follicles are opening in my crown in a different way, and like it's shedding old stuff. It's like, anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
So that source code thing is like what you touch with Soulogy. You know, if you want to, that they say that enters through the field, through the core, through the source portal, through the crown chakra.
Yeah.
And it's like entering even through this continent, it would be through the North Pole and down that central magnetic line, down into Galveston and then into Central America too.
Wow. So I think one of the things that, as I'm talking to Huong and listening to what she's saying, feeling it, and then I was talking about watching these documentaries, and I haven't felt the need to go and look into anything. I'm like, I feel like I did enough research over the years, but there was another documentary, and it was about this first generation Chinese American lady who was a student in the Northeast somewhere, and she ended up she became whatever her field was, but she became she started researching this really not talked about, just like you're talking about the Canadian Indigenous. It's World War II. The Japanese take over, I think it's northern China. They invaded, and I can't remember the name of the place. And it was the most atrocious thing I've ever heard about. I mean, genocide wise, it was all these Japanese soldiers came to town, raped and killed it was just, and I'm thinking, why am I watching this? But what happened was, and what's interesting about this show, this lady ended up committing suicide, transitioning at 36 because of all the downloads from researching this event. This event was hushed up. It was hushed up in China. It was hushed up in Japan. I mean, they literally went in and went crazy. Okay. And the descriptions aren't even necessary. But what was interesting about the documentary was that she was interviewing people on both sides. She was interviewing survivors, which was incredible. And then she was interviewing Japanese soldiers and how they were just basically they were saying, look, this is what we were told to do. This is how we were trained. So as I'm listening to what y'all are saying, I think obviously in order for it to integrate it has to be revealed, which is what's happening in Canada with these graves and like in this situation with this documentary.
So Todd, you asked like why you watched it though. Like, you know that you're like, that's the, like, you're actively shifting the energy by your act of like spending time and attention.
Yeah.
That space is the thing.
Yeah.
Like that's your act of, you know, you could call it grid work or gatekeeping or light work or blah, blah, blah. Put a label on it, but it's just your attention in your field.
Yeah. No, I resonate with that.
Things pop around, you know, like what things get your attention is always fascinating to me, but they'll always come in like groups.
Well,
right?
it's victim, but it's victim consciousness
it is.
To Huong's point, because you know, it's like oneness is oneness. There's no in between. Well, victim consciousness is the same way. I started to notice that how easy, like what, you know, since I've been back, I've noticed, and people use the word addictions. I don't really care for the word addiction. They're distraction, and then they become such a habit that you don't even think about it. It's like riding a bike. But I started, because I've been alone for 3 weeks now, and I'm noticing in every moment where I send my energy and where victim consciousness plays in that energy. That's trippy, right? So if that's happening for me, it's got to be happening for everybody. But I think it, you know, well, that's what apocalypse means, unveiling, right? So like everything has to be acknowledged. This is like the parts of us. Like I know people have had some pretty intense experiences in the last couple of weeks. I've had these experiences where these parts of me, I'm going to visit these parts of me in my past that I put to rest, but I was going to feel the energy fully from all the parties involved. It was really, really strange. Some of this stuff was really, really intense, what I would call dark moments in my life, which are great blessings. But it's like everything is coming up to be revealed and respected and honored, right? No matter what it is. That's how I feel.
I think the hardest, let's go back to victim consciousness, because in my own personal field, I seem to attract in my professional life, team players that have that vibration, and I need to coach them out of that vibration, which takes a lot of energy. Plus, it annoys the hell out of me. Like most of the time, I just want to slap them. Right? It's like Todd. It's like, get your shit together, man.
Yeah, she did that to me. Did you know she did that to me?
Which time?
It was the day after Soulogy Fest. Was the Soulogy? The thing at the restaurant was Monday night. I go home. Tuesday, I wake up at 2:07, and I realize I have a bus full of 75 chairs and 20 tables that I got to take back across the desert by 3. So then I came back, and then I just laid on the bed, and then she called me. That's when she put up that crazy picture of me. Well, the next day, she called, can we talk about the finance part of it? I'm like, yeah. And I started bawling and crying and just like, I mean, I was gone. And she just like looks at me and energetically slaps me in the face. And she's like, do you know what you and Morgan are doing? You need to get yourself together now.
So going back to the victim consciousness, one of my aha moments when I was coaching one of my team players out of her situation is, for humanity, we are this is going to be really hard, really, really hard, because we're talking about 50% of humanity echoes this vibration, right? We have to, and
like
it's one of the, pardon?
So it's probably higher than that, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I would say, sure, I would agree. But I would say 50% minimum has this vibration of victimization. Yeah. They created that narrative. In order for us to shift it, we have to let everyone that is going through that basically narrative and say, hey, you know what? I totally acknowledge, I hear you, I see you, I understand you are carrying a lot of trauma. But you created that trauma. Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's just like, as a collective, it's like, for whatever reason, this chapter of our collective wanted to experience that trauma. At the human level, it's just an experience. We can't rate it as good or bad. It's just an experience. It's like when you're going grocery shopping, you pick up apples, you pick up oranges. One is not better than the other. They're just apples and oranges. You just wanted to experience each one. It's just in duality, we have applied like dark, light, bad, good to it. So if the group that has gone through victimization, and everybody carries this at one point or another, if we can sit there and say, you know what, that was just an experience. I wonder, as soon as you acknowledge that, if it shifts everything, where it's just like, hey, that was an experience. Do not label the experience. I wonder if that breaks the chain of duality, where you're just like not applying any value to it. And then realizing you created that experience. So whether you appreciate it or not, it was good for you.
Well, that popped in. I wrote the center and then the anti-center, right? So that's like in the galactic way, the part in the sky that we look when we look away from the center of the galaxy. Like if we were to stand on the surface and this galaxy's behind us, and we look out into the vast edge of space, or they call it the galactic edge, or that's also known as the anti-center. So that's the balance point of the center, and that part of the sky is the part that Todd and I seem to talk about a lot, or I spend a lot of time. And it reminded me of the Anubis stuff that you were talking about. It's the horn of the bulls of Taurus at the top of that. Doesn't Anubis, is he the one with the horns?
Yeah.
I don't. Anyway, the horns of the bull of Taurus.
Yeah, the horns.
Top of that, above Aldebaran and the Pleiades, that's the anti-center part of the.
So I'm telling you, that's where my soul comes from, or something.
June 10th eclipse happened at that part of the sky. So it's
June
like
June 10th. You know, this lady wrote me, and she said, "You better get back." And I don't even know her. And she's like, "You better get back to Arkansas by the eclipse on the 10th because you have to be there while Morgan's where she's at." And I'm like, oh, whatever, you know, people. And then it all started coming in like, you got to get back. And Morgan's like, I think you need to get back. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. And then I spent that last night, you know, with the coyote and all that stuff. And I woke up the next day throwing up and crying. And then I knew I got to go. Right. Like there was a reason I had to be here for that moment. And Aldebaran has been like on my radar. That whole area has been on my radar constantly. But, you know, going back to what you were saying about getting to the point where you say, okay, I created this, we created this, right?
Yeah.
But going back to these documentaries, right? The thing that made the biggest impression upon me was whether it was the story in 1952 in Live Oak, Florida, which had a lot to do with segregation, but it was deeper than that, or the one in China, the massacre of this town. We're talking like 50,000 people. It was crazy. The genocide, the ethnic cleansing, the rapes. I mean, it was horrible. But again, like Julie said, I was supposed to sit with it. But the thing that was the most impressive upon me was the women. So it was a black woman that shot a white doctor who was a bad guy. They came to find out later. Well, she was being sexually taken advantage of and drugged on a daily basis. Oh. And so in the narrative, the lady talked about how in the South, it was understood that a white man could go and take a black woman. There's nothing the black woman could do. Ugh. Now, I kind of thought, oh, well, that makes sense. But then as I was listening to it, I thought, wow, this is like really like no BS. Like this was a good looking black lady and the guy was not, right? And he was a doctor and he was a town leader, whatever. And he just went to her house and said, go upstairs. And then it started dating. Now, that was that part of it. And then in the stories about the Chinese massacre, it was the women. They were little girls. I mean, it was just mind-blowing what some of the stories. So I think to Hung's point, this stuff, everything has to come up and it has to be acknowledged. If I look at my own situation in the last 2 weeks with my personal stuff here, that's what's happened. I'm like, why is this coming in? And that turned into, let me go look for these moments when I was doing these things. And I went back and my whole body kind of re-experienced, I don't want to say re-experienced it, but my whole body aligned with my body sensations, good and bad, in these moments. And then something happened to me. I lost more hair, and it seemed to be making progress.
But if you can strip the energy of like what Hung was talking about, it's neither good nor bad or black nor light.
Yeah.
Like if you can strip it of its storyline, it's just pure energy. It's just pure.
That's right.
Symbols and codes, and like you can recreate from it. But that victim hook stays to the story of it.
And the victim.
What happens is in our current situation, we have two strong dualities. It's always good or bad. That's the strongest duality that is feeding our reality right now. Can you imagine what we can create if we actually united those two streams into one? That is the golden child stream. In order for us to do that, though, we have to strip the emotionality charge of it so it can go back to its basically 0 point, right? Where it has no narrative, nothing. It's just pure power. And out of that pure power, we have an ability to basically create from it. And whatever story that you create from it, it's going to be aligned to out of pure creation. And pure creation can go in different directions. You can create accidentally out of fear, which a lot of people are unaware of, which they're operating out of now. So, or you can create out of pure passion, like what you really want. And you can always tell the ones that are created, they're all the same level of power. Fear and love, same level of power. One is not more than the other. Because I think that's the other thing about duality. People are saying love will always outwin fear. I'm like, no, they're the same value.
That's right.
It's the same. It's like talking to light bulbs, right? 60 watt, 30 watt, doesn't matter how many watts. If you combine all of that wattage, you have power. But stop calling the 60 watt bad. Stop calling the 30 watt good, or whatever it is that you like to label it. Unite it. You strip it just to straight wattage. And that's the next step of creation for everyone. Right now, we're so divided.
Well, we're integrating every polarity. Why would fear and love be any different?
Exactly.
Like, that's such a like life and death. That's like the Anubis thing I had last week. That's what he was saying. He was saying use the eclipse. I'm sorry. Use the what was it? The solstice. Use the He says the solstice is the best metaphor because it's the longest day and the longest night at the same time. The highest peak of light in the shortest duration of darkness, all at the same time. I'm sorry, the longest darkness, all at the same time. That's what he was saying. And he said it's not a noun. They're not nouns. They're actually kind of like a motion, a verb type of energy. And so I get that. Yeah, that's pretty, it would seem very simple because people say, well, you either choose fear or love. Well, no, actually, they're the same thing.
It's like you're making a line of union or joining line between the two. Or like like Hung and I are often talking about bridge building. To me, that's like that.
I don't bridge build anymore.
I know you're off the job.
I aborted that mission. That mission sucks ass, man.
Like that core filament. You talk about the light bulb then.
Yeah.
Why do sometimes light bulbs, the old fashioned light bulbs with the thin filament, if that filament's not there, the light, it's not, that golden light isn't produced. It's like the space, bridging the gap.
Yes.
With spark.
Well, that's the reason. You know what's funny? Because so going back, giving some context to what Julie's saying. So Julie and I were probably inadvertently, we didn't know it, but we were bridge builders for probably a big chunk of our life. And then last 2 years, all the bridges started burning or collapsing. Not
the old bridges, not the bridges of light. They're still intact, but the underpinning bridges are washed away.
But it's interesting. That paradigm totally died in 2020 for me. I couldn't even relate to bridge building. Every time I attempted, I'd fall off the fucking bridge, man. So it was just like, this mission sucks. And this year it occurred to me, I don't need to create bridges at all. You know what I need to do? I just need to stay centered in my own conditions that I thrive in. And the ripple effect of that will send out whatever experience that is going to be conducive to this bubble. Like, I don't need to build bridges to other experiences. Some experiences I don't prefer. You know what I mean? So why am I building bridges to that world?
Well, we didn't talk about before you have to go, or any of us, like the time walking thing, the time slip. Because I don't have very many people I can talk to about this.
Okay, well, I'm going to go pee, but you talk about your time slip and I'll be back.
Yeah, and we can we can go. We don't have to stop at the end of the second hour.
Well, Hung might have a life. I don't know.
Well, she can go, but you can stay and we'll talk more.
She does have a life.
But you know, that makes sense what she's saying. I mean, I kind of feel like I understood that, what she said. I would just never said it that way. I hadn't said it that way, and she said she used the word bridge. So if you think about it, if you're building a bridge, you have to have an origination point, and that origination point is what she's talking about. So if your frequency goes up, and let's just say your frequency is not 100%, let's say you're 90 percentile, and you're making a bridge, it's not even going to work anyway, because it's not 100%. So I see that happening. I see like people are just focusing on their own field, fortifying their field, and holding their frequency. I see this happening with people, and part of that is being to me is being shown by people that are packing up their stuff and just going. Like, I'm just meeting people every single day that are just packing their stuff up and going. I met them in Sedona, like 4 or 5 or 6 people, and they're like, I don't know what happened. I just, sold my house and left my relationship, and I just bought this caravan, and I just rented a condo in Sedona for 6 months, and I don't even know why I'm here. Like stuff like that. Just one after the other after the other.
So Hung has departed, but now I can see her whale completely. And the whales, like, that's beautiful. The whales have been super active in helping with this corridor too. And Clampos is the spot in British Columbia where those first bodies were found that she was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
There were people doing ceremony there. And we're talking about whales now. And the whales, because I got to see your whale fully. What? Todd, we went Todd on it.
Oh, did he get off track?
Went galactic, no, collective. I meant quantum. Yeah. So and then I decided to bring up your whale because it's so beautiful. But also the top of the head and the eclipse, solstice, that the June 10th eclipse corridor was from like around here, Atlantic coast, up and over the North Pole, over to the Alaska zone, or your zone, Hung. But it went over the North Pole too. And that, like, it regrids that part of the earth when we have a solar eclipse, that everything gets, the temperature goes down and everything happens, and the grids get kind of wiped in that area and recoded in short form. But that across the top of the head has to do a lot with crown stuff. And, I'm on this like beehive thing, but the whales, I was talking about how the whales showed up at that ceremony that people were doing in Clampos. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, I remember that.
Whales, and the Arctic whales, the right whale, the whales that come here that are very endangered. Their summer breeding grounds, or the summer grounds, are up in the Arctic. And anyway, there's just a lot of whale cross-continent.
So are you talking about, like, okay, so that first grave site they found, is it on the coast or what?
No. So the first grave site is actually inland. But there's tons of.
Where's Compost though? Where's that place?
Yeah. I'm not sure where that is, but
I think it's on the Victoria Island. But
that's what I'm saying. So
near Campbell River.
Yes, there is another one on the coast. I want to say it's close to Campbell River, so it's north of Vancouver Island there. And they did do a ceremony. They did a beautiful healing ceremony. And I think it's the Haida Nation. I'm pretty sure it's the Haida Nation. They did a beautiful ceremony in basically healing, but it was specific to children. So I think the biggest thing is the other interesting thing I was observing is the children are up for basically review. And we always talk about, Morgan and Todd talk about the golden child, and it's the children metaphorically is used as an icon for this stage of the collective. And the reason why is, as children, everyone knows, you come in with your veil, like your veil is not there from your previous life. You don't come in with hate. You come in with the purest code, which is this moment. All children are this moment. So when you explain to them, oh, you know, Bob the Builder is in 30 minutes, they have no clue what that means. They just want
Bob the Builder, Dora.
Builder now, all right? You know what I mean? So it's the children code is about innocence, purity, this present moment, which is the true gift of humanity. And we strip it as you get older. You get a little bit conditioned and all the different programs come in. So with the Paraguay ceremony, they didn't do a healing ceremony in where they're like trying to release, because there's a couple different ceremonies that happen with the different nations. They did a ceremony that is actually for children. And it's what they usually do, that ceremony when a mother is about to give birth. So it was interesting because they did that ceremony and the whales responded to that in a huge show, right? So when I read that, I was like, wow, because I've gone through many ceremonies with my Cree family, and I know they're very specific, but I know the Paraguay, it wasn't announced in the media because I don't think the media was clever enough to pick it up, but it was actually a birth ceremony that they did. The media picked it up as a healing ceremony.
Right. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
And that's the child is the union of the strands, the magnetic plus and minus, the coming together. That's the union of the.
It's the highest point of humanity creation is always the child, right? Because we can create children out of basically the duality, the two forms. So the Paraguayan nation, for them, they got the information that it's not about healing, right? It's about basically observing that this had happened to them, but for this generation that's coming in, it will not happen to them. So it's a birthing story of grace, beauty, strength, all of that. Yes, and whales, like Julie was saying, whales are huge code carriers. They're like the galactic guardians of Earth. A lot of people don't know that. And turtles. That's why they live so long. They're beneath the surface. They circulate, and they are actually what we call the security system of Earth, which is going to a totally different galactic conversation that Julie and I always talk about.
So on this, I just want to clarify. So the tribe had this birthing ceremony unbeknownst to the
media.
public.
Yeah.
And so the whales, the whale activity you're talking about, was that something that people actually saw, or was it something?
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty deep.
Yeah.
They showed up in the cove and breached and like put on a little whale show.
Huge show. Yeah, which was captured, but the media miscaptured it as a healing ceremony when it actually was a birthing ceremony.
That's super good intel, Hung. I'm clapping and said thanks for letting us know that.
Yeah.
That did not make it through the airwaves over here.
No. And you know what? It's one of those things that as soon as it's funny because when I'm reading the media, there's obviously there's the literal reading of it. And then at the same time, I get smacked in the head with the other side of it where I get information and it's like, oh, it was a birthing ceremony. The ceremony is normally conducted in the form of making sure that the child coming in, all the children coming in. So they're not holding on to the old story of children being murdered, which I thought was really interesting. They have created a new story where the children coming in are going to be freed. And they're not going to cycle through this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like building a whole new world.
Yes. Exactly.
Building new codes.
Yeah. Exactly.
So speaking of whales and dolphins, did you guys see that show with Amanda Smith?
No.
Oh, yes. I popped in for a little bit.
Okay,
and I was one of the people so when you look at, they put these in those dot pattern things where you're supposed to look at it and soften your eyes and you can see the figure underneath it. That's what I did with her. And I could understand what she was saying, not in English words, but I was like, oh, it's like a direct transmission. I was like, let her talk, just let her talk, Todd. Stop,
That's what I did.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what I was.
it was great. We were
So,
like, a lot of us were like, we can
so
hear her.
Hung, she came in like Alvin and the Chipmunks on steroids. Like, yeah, but
Yeah, no.
Marble,
Oh,
yeah.
that one.
did you see that?
I
Well,
saw parts of it. I saw parts of it. Where
okay, so the reason,
yeah.
the reason I'm
Super
asking,
feline.
yeah, yes, and other things, but the reason
Yeah.
I'm saying this is because when it happened, she came in the studio. We had 29 minutes. We couldn't connect. All this weird shit was happening, like weird, like some of it had not happened in 3,000 shows, and I've had a lot of things happen. And so as soon as she came on, I said, "What the hell is that?" She was coming through, and there was no lips moving, and I just heard push live. So I did, and I said, "Well, look, what do we have? We have to respect what's happening." But the reason I brought it up, because you brought the whales up, my question is, what the hell was that? I mean, that, like, it, you could make an excuse and go, "Oh, well, it's just a signal, or it's just the hardware or whatever." But there was obviously something going on, because first of all, the guidance I got. Second of all, it was validated because more people kept coming on. And I know the numbers on these shows. And someone like Amanda would be, because there's multiple platforms, but let's just say YouTube, she'd get 200 to 300 views because she's not known. It's already over 1,000 just on YouTube. It's well over that on 2 of the Facebook pages. So that means that one of 2 things is happening. Either people are being drawn to it just unconsciously and intuitively, and they're watching it, or people are telling them, go watch it, because the numbers just keep going up. Now, I'm not, just making that specific to this. What I'm trying to say is, are we going to start seeing stuff like this?
Well, it's direct broadcast. Like it to
Yeah.
me, it was like transmission. Like it was back to like that, like almost like Morse code. It was, I'll say this with all due respect, but there's a lot of people that like stream light language out of their mouth, and they have no idea. It's like their ego language.
Yeah.
And it's like a show or like a thing. Hers was like raw and real. It was like direct transmission.
Yeah.
And it was like encoded, and
Yes.
and it was beautiful. But it was, to me, as someone who works with the Crystalline Broadcast Network, it's almost like, you take when I spent an hour and a half this morning cleaning out water bottles at my house, and water bottles and straws, because we try to use the plastic stuff, but they use those little, like, the little tubey, like pipe cleaner thing to like clean out straws. Like her communication did that for me on the Soulogy lines. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it was very important. I don't know why, but it was, and I'm just wondering, because to me, as I was going through it, I was, just saying whatever was coming, and it was like, this is a physical manifestation of what goes on in the energetic field. It's like part of the transition. And I wonder if we're going to see more characteristics like that. And you're going to see, because like, if you look at the internet is the highest physical manifestation of the ethers. This is just taking it to another level. When I was looking at her, it wasn't just the audio, it was her image, it was her face and her countenance and colors, and it was just all this stuff. I'm like, holy shit, am I the only one? And then everybody's like, no. And it wasn't pie in the sky stuff. It was actually, and so like whether it be dragons or something like that, are we going to, fall into it? Are we going to feel into it? Are we going to engage it? I think that's what I was getting out of it. Like, let's run with it, But
it's like how the whales talk to, like, I'm not sure, Hung and I have never talked about how the whales talk to us differently. Like, we all hear things differently, right? Like, some it's kinesthetic, some people see codes, some people get like physical, tangible feelings of it. And it's like training us to, hear galactic language, whale language, like, how do you talk to your power animals? It's like this transcendent communication style.
Yeah, for sure. And so going back to the whales, because I know a lot of people have been interacting with the whales lately. The whales have been, because they've always been so when I say security codes of Earth and this collective, what that means is basically they are trying to keep out interference from other experiences. So our playground is pretty tight knit. Part of the experience of this playground is not having interactions from higher level experiences. So the whales are there as a safety network to make sure that we don't experience it when we're not ready for it. Because if we experience something that is above our visceral nervous system, we literally will all like vanish into thin air.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much. It would be too much.
That's right. So we would be vaporized if other experiences from other dimensions came in at way too much of a pace. So the whales and the turtles, they are encoded to keep that experience out of our field. So one of the things that is some people pick up, if you're a little bit, and everybody's built a little bit differently when it comes to coding, right? So for Julie is very, you hear a lot, right? You're more auditory because you do the sound healing as well. So for the whales, you probably experience their whale song, right? So if they start vocalizing, that comes through really powerfully for you, probably. Yes, no?
A few different channels I hear them, but yes, that's true too.
Yeah, and then so for me, I actually don't have that. So that auditory stream that comes from them, that code does, it sounds pretty, but it actually, that's not how the information comes for me. It's actually very boring. How the information comes for me for the whales is my brain would just go blank and I have to be in a blank mode. And then what happens is information drops straight in, just kind of like codes from a computer. I don't see, I don't hear, it just pops up as knowledge. So that's how the whales basically have been transmitting knowledge for me, is it just pops in my brain. Yeah. I wish it was visceral in like the auditory sensing and the visual censoring, but it's not. It's just straight up.
But that's, I call that direct knowing.
Yeah.
It's just like you get the pop, but that happens. They're like that too.
Yeah. Yeah. So for them, what I've been noticing, if you play in the galactic field of like the galactics are interfering with our system, and some of Todd's guests have that narrative where they're like, oh, the reptilians have been siphoning our energy. So some of the guests do have that narrative, which is fine, right? It excites them. It makes their life a little bit more lively. The whales and turtles actually try to keep out that experience, because that is what is called like an overlay experience that shouldn't actually be existing here. But they are able to pull it in because of that, right? So what the whales have been doing, which I'm not, this is where I have to sit with the information, but they are changing the security codes. So to answer your question, Todd, the whales are testing our tolerance for new experiences. So they're testing our tolerance for stimulation that has not ever been happening on a physical manifestation. So they may ease up on the security codes and bombard us to see what the tolerance looks like, to see if we can handle it.
That's so interesting. I see it as like their travel pathways they make a net for me, but that's the same way for you. But it's like they're easing up like the dots per inch of that net or less. Cool.
There's more elasticity to it. So what you're saying, like there's more.
So what Julie was saying is there's security nets. If you think of it visually as a fishing net, there's like little holes that information can come through. So depending on your receivership, that stimulation will come through the holes. But they're testing the tolerance. So some of the holes are now bigger. So if you're asking, will you experience dragon in the physical form? I think they're testing that net. But in order for us to test that net, we have to let go of vindication, righteousness, because those are such powerful emotions. It's hard to have that experience coexist with this experience in our meat sack without exploding.
Meat sack. Well, and look, so this is what I was saying. It's related to it. It's victim consciousness. So when it's different now than it was a year ago or 2 years ago on the show, somebody comes on, there's a real difference between telling your story and let me tell you who I am. Let me tell you who I am is victim consciousness. Hey, I was a national director at Home Depot. Hey, I was Jesus' son, in a previous life, whatever it is. I'm watching that be deconstructed along with the yogi guru kind of thing, right? And then the other thing about these narratives, it's the same thing. If it, and I really am deep into this the last 2 or 3 weeks, because I always watch the platforms and everything, and people that you know and I know, and I'm watching this evolution, this transition, and it's like a deconstruction, and it's brutal, of what was, and this reconstruction of what really is, which is exactly what you're talking about in terms of the ceremony going from one of basically grief to one of birth, right? In terms of the children, the one that they had. So I'm watching this happen, and I'm watching it affect people, contemporaries and platforms. And I'm watching it really close. And it looks like it's going into warp speed. Like people are being brought to an even playing field come hell or high water, and it's pretty interesting.
So I need to get going.
Where are you going? You're leaving?
I have an appointment. I have to.
You do?
I mentioned that you have a life. So
Pardon me?
Todd, I mentioned that you have a life and like
I do. I have Morgan had asked me, can I schedule you in? And I'm like, yeah. Are you booking for September? She's like, what? No, this is for a good cause.
We just got started again.
And I was like, well, I have one opening in the morning of this Friday, and that is it. Like literally, I have a very heavy schedule until September, unless cancellations happen. But I do need to go. But you guys can keep going. But
Okay.
I'm going to leave.
Okay. Thank you. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Roof, roof.
Okay.
So, okay, as I got up this morning, once I got the cobwebs out, the first thing I'm thinking is, what the hell? Why is Aldebaran so in my face the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Like, even when I look in the sky, it's Pleiades, it's Orion, it's that same area that you're talking about. The Eye of Taurus is Aldebaran, and so I mean, is that something? And you said that space is also in Sagittarius, which I'm Sagittarius.
No,
Huh?
good.
No,
They're past the sky from each other.
Yeah, the other one. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. And I'm wondering, I'm going, is this all being made for me? I mean, like, what the hell? Like, I can't totally pull it together, but it's I don't know. It's just like, it keeps literally, I even was on the internet, and I don't even know how this happened. And this site pulled, or this video pulled up entitled Aldebaran. And I didn't search for it, like, is that a big part of the Earth lineage?
Well, we've been getting, I have a lot more intel that I've downloaded since we talked last about
Good.
that region of the sky.
Fill in the details.
And so I'm trying to think of where to start from, or decide where to start from. So back in December, we had a Jupiter Saturn conjunction. That was a big thing, right?
Yeah.
And during that time, I was really called to do a lot of grid work. I was called to the Temple of Jupiter in Tripoli in Libya. I didn't go there in body, but I was looking at it, working with it. And I could feel that there was another temple, and maybe it was of Saturn, or it was like really significant above it. I couldn't figure out if it was in like Rome, or if it was Malta, or Sicily, but like in that zone of like Mediterranean. So it was interesting to go back to I didn't know you were from Spain, or your lineage is from Spain, but from the Mediterranean stuff. Because my dad's family is from Sicily and Malta. So I have like the Italian.
Ah, that's what it is.
So I found the linear's gone, but I have I'll do a self plug so people can, I have this kind of as a free share. So my online school, or platform of sharing, Living Light Library, I launched a few months ago.
Is it livinglightlibrary.com?
No, it's explore at Innerspace Voyages.
Oh, wait, hang on.
Or they can just find it from my website. Is innerspacevoyages.com.
Okay.
So voyages.com. Thank you. So I have, if you go on there and click to taking voyages, so I call them inner space voyages because I want to take people on these extended missions, if you were. Like a journey is like a short trip, like an individual session, and a voyage is more of an exploration, longer. But I have this shared there, and it's free, but you just have to sign up to look at it. Because the like YouTube and the Facebook, it just doesn't, like, it's not a great container anymore, right? We've got platforms.
Right.
So during some alignment, Mars came to the Pleiades in March for us, and in our sky. And during that time, I built an Andara grid in my yard, and I had it out there. I have this group of Andaras that I've used for years now that are coded to the Pleiades. And I spent time with that, and that's a whole nother story. But during that time of meditation and connecting in and with that grid, I found this body of knowledge that's from Malta, from this ancient temple, and it's called the Talkadi stone. So archaeologists found this stone, and when they look it up, it's like a sky map, and it has this like wedge-shaped thing, and it's a chunk probably of a larger thing. But this sky map shows the Hyades, which Aldebaran is like kind of the dot at the bottom of that V of the Hyades, and the Pleiades. And so they called that part of the sky. So the ecliptic is the path that the sun and the planets take across our sky.
Right.
So they call this the golden gate of the ecliptic. So ancient times, and it's not just in Malta, but that I've now since researched other parts of the Mediterranean, and I'm sure other places around the world, have used this golden gate between, Aldebaran and the Pleiades is one of the most identifiable, like easy to see things for all of us, right? We see it in the sky a lot, but through that, the moon through its phases once a month goes through that gate. The sun goes through that gate once a year, and all the terrestrial planets go through that gate. Everything that flows on the ecliptic, all the celestial bodies in our solar system. So we can see Venus, Mars, Mercury, and sometimes Jupiter and Saturn go through that gate because those are the ones that we can see with naked eye, not with a telescope. But that gate is like and then the top of that gate, like above it, I was talking about the horns of the bull, like right above that is the looking out into the vast of space. So across the sky, is that like the opposite of the galactic center. So it's the
anti-center, right?
But so that golden gate has been just like my thing that I've been focusing on most of March, April, May.
So the golden gate of
the ecliptic is that space in the sky between the Pleiades and the Hyades and Aldebaran. But they used to use, there's so many things to talk about with it. They used to use it as like a lunar calendar, because if you watch it, which I have on my, I have sky apps that I use, you'll see like the moon will be like full 1 month, and then next phase the next month, and the next phase the next month. And it's like, it goes through that gate and like waxing and waning if you look at it across the months. And some people call it like the birthplace of man, that gate. I've seen that like as a little tagline.
Really? That feels right for some reason.
It's like where the souls pour through that come to live in this part of the galaxy.
Well,
it's a whole thing about that, and that which parts are important to say now. That just like unlocking that knowledge and using it now is like, why are we all drawn to that part of the sky? It's like it's coded in our DNA to look skyward and to, it was more, now we can just go to the grocery store and buy food, but it was used as like, is a good time to plant, like what cycle of what moon is like up there by there. It's like, that's a nice time to, I'll take to my vessels and go sea voyaging, or, I'll plant crops, or it's like, it's that real primal in our
directions,
code.
guidance, right? Direction, guidance, code. Yeah.
So the golden gate, and there's other gates too. And I've seen like what was shown to me is along this path of the ecliptic. And for me this year, this 5-year, I've been shown to really work with the metallic elements. So what I'm doing is mapping out right now, like there's a golden gate, but there's also a silver gate and a platinum gate, a palladium gate, and a copper gate that are like kind of like in this pentagon shape around the path of the ecliptic and the different spots in the sky. Where we are right now, or like yesterday or whatever, the 23rd, 2 days ago, Mars moved through. So now that gate was what I focused on as for myself in the spring. Now here, I'm more with the beehive cluster. But I noticed this point, and this point I wanted to tell Todd. The stars that are in the Hyades and the stars that are in the beehive cluster have a similar velocity and direction through the galaxy. So they think that they're like related, like they were born in the same nebula.
Well, so what's in the beehive cluster? Is that Pleiades?
Beehive cluster is down the sky a bit in the Cancer, the Crab constellation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the, this speaks to your hair thing too. It's the, like said to be the pineal gland of the crab of the constellation Cancer. It's right in the center of the forehead. So that's a whole separate place in the sky that's getting activated now. But go back to Aldebaran. But there's a thing that is related to them because the stars have similar origin.
Yeah. God, this is like making me, this is like everything now. It's like it's in between the words, all the codes coming in. Like all this stuff is coming in. Like when you said they're like related to each other, yet they're across the universe from each other. And that just kind of reminds me of what's happening in my life right now, which it's weird.
Well, that's kind of like what you, and I don't ever want to speak to like, Hung would be glad to do this, but I'm not going to speak to like what you and Morgan have going on, but like when you talk about the center and the anti-center, and then you talk about the winter solstice, summer solstice, like you're in the north and south hemisphere, you're across, like if you could dig a hole from where you are, you'd probably end up in Morgan's like living room, right? Like across the earth from each other. And it's like the way that balance point and the masculine, feminine, and the North Pole Taurus and the South Pole Taurus, and like how they click in together, and the Merkaba, and that like you two are, that's what as I see it, is like you're forming this like connection line physically, you two are.
I feel that. And I feel like this interdimensional portal out here, which has been speaking to me. Well, it's always spoke to me since I moved in a year ago. But when I was in Sedona coming back, it started speaking to me. I'm like, why are you talking to me? And I'm not even
portal?
Home. Yeah. It's an interdimensional portal. Hang on. There's a mother tree right there. It's on the other side of the mother tree. So I've had some experiences with it, but
is that a portal you installed, or
no,
it was there when you moved there?
Yeah, and it's like Sedona type energy. It's like I watched it erupt one night, and plus I can just see in it. So there's access to really, off universe, off planet, obviously, inner Earth, and then the whole inner Earth thing. Like when I went in and looked to the inner Earth, which I'm familiar with, but I just had never been immersed in it like this. When I looked at the inner Earth through that portal, I saw a bigger expanse than what we see looking in the sky. Like it was so much bigger. And I was like, holy shit, like the universe isn't up there.
The whole universe is in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. But so it started speaking to me, and again, it's just bits and pieces. But it was like, okay, so I think it was yesterday.
You think it's an Aldebaran Stargate?
I don't know what it is. I just know that I was told when you get back, you're going to be working with it like you haven't been before. I've done a couple of ceremonies with it when I was guided to, but this is different. This is like you're going to take the lid off, and you're going to invite and immerse and engage with all energies of the universe. And we're talking colossal accessibility here. And see, yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, it kind of came in like, and I don't know exactly how it goes, but something like she's going to find one over there, or something like what you're saying is like, when you do this, you're going to pop out over there, almost like I'm going to teleport. And maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but I will tell you that I came to this town 5 years ago. I left October 13th, 2016, Houston. I left with, that's when I started this. And a lady, a friend of mine, a sister, picked me up in Houston, drove me here to this little town in Arkansas where I'd never been. And then I come back the next year, and then the next year with Morgan, and then the next year in 2020, and then here it is 2021. And I've had a lot of experiences and recollections and, past life code, all that stuff, lots of animal encounters. I live in a forest. I live with forest behind me now. And so this place, there's something happening. And as I'm talking to you, I'm maybe getting a little bit of a clue as to where this is going. But I think it has something to do with, our part of it has to do with accessing, let's just call it like, teleportation, materialization, dematerialization, that type of thing. Like the dissipation of space in our experience here in this realm, something like that. I don't know.
So have you always been back to that house? You said you've come to your spot.
What happened was, Van Buren, Arkansas is a little town outside of Fort Smith. My sister that brought me over here 5 years ago lives just down the street, because it's not a big town, and I stayed there for 2 months, and then I came back the next year by chance. Then I came back the next year with Morgan by chance. And so I never knew of this place. But when this happened, June the 6th, and see, all this is happening a year later, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Morgan sends me a note. We signed the lease on a year ago. This was like June 6th. We got married on June the 12th. I mean, all this period. So, but what happened was, when I came here, it's a duplex, right? It's a duplex, and it looks like a little small house on the front. And then there's this hill you go down to back here where I just showed you, and it's all hidden. Now, it'd been empty for a long time. There was a bunch of spirits here, and I did my work and worked with the forest and saw the portals, and then I knew the interdimensional was here. But what happened was, the address is 1601 and 1603. And so I stepped out in front and looked at the house like 3 or 4 days after we got here one night, and I'm looking at it, and I'm watching diagonally, horizontally, vertically, all these things integrating, masculine, feminine, and how it was symbolic. Morgan and I, the whole night, it was. So there's something about this place, and I know this more than ever, that is a very important interdimensional, because there's portals back here in the forest. I can see them, and I've got to know them, and they're deep. They're very elemental, very organic, but also obviously connected to the cosmos. But this one is different. This is an interdimensional portal. That's all I can say. And I don't know the extent of it, but it feels like it has something to do with what you were talking about. Like I could drill a hole and be in her living room.
So do you think, did it show itself to you kind of recently? Or?
It showed itself to me when I got here. But it showed itself to me in a way that like, in other words, I'm familiar with it. It was a little bit freaky because there was like reptilians coming out and inner earth beings and, light and dark, we would say. And then it was, when was this? So this would have been, I think she was still here. So I would say this would be like early March. Sometime in March, there was some date came, and I'm sitting out here. I was in my studio downstairs, and then I was called, oh, you need to go build a fire. And I'm like, okay, I'm always up for that. I knew something was going to happen. So I built the fire, and then I was told, you need to go and, like, in other words, I got a broom, and I created a circle around the portal. And then I watched the portal cap come off, and I watched this stream of energy come out. And the stream of energy was the color of the original goo when the earth was created. Now, this is just my story. I was there. I remember the way it smells. It smells kind of like shrimp, like a pier would smell. It's kind of like fishy. or shrimpy or something. And I watched it come out. And as it was coming out, it was being released. They said, we're going to release all of the, light, dark, whatever, reptilian, cosmic, galactic, angelic, everything, right? And I watched it come out like this massive fire hose, and it had the color of the goo, which is kind of a pinkish orange with, like, say, white, like crystal white. And then I watched it change into all of these other colors, like gold and purple and blues and greens, on planet colors, off planet colors. And at the same time that was happening, it was being released to the earth, I understood or saw that it was also going the other way. So I don't know what's up with it, but I know I'm going to be spending time with her. I'll be honest with you. The first, I want to say 3 or 4 or 5 times, or even for a few months, 3 or 4 or 5 months, I never went near it. I would look at it, I would observe it, but a little bit of it scared me, And then I got past that, and then that night that it erupted, then everything was like, oh, okay. So, because I was like going, oh my God, we're going to release all of these onto the earth. I'm like, holy shit, I don't know if I want the responsibility or even to be part of it. Am I, you know what I mean? It was just kind of like daunting. And then when I went to Sedona, and then I'm coming back, or I'm starting to come back, it started talking to me. And I'm like, okay, like, I know we have a date in destiny, or something's going on. I know I know this. I know this place because when I first woke up, all I got was me traveling through the tunnels of the inner earth. And then the more I tap into it, the more it's like, okay, because and again, this is just my own intel. There's not just like Telos or whatever, Shambhala. There's not just like 3 or 4 different species, quote unquote, down there. There's shitloads, like more of a varied representation down there than there is up here.
Well,
it's just,
yeah. A few things came through as you were saying that, a lot of things, but for sure, like the inner, why I named my space inner space. It's like it's all like the surface of your skin or the surface of the earth is the interface point, and whatever's out there is so within. It's like the whole universe is inner earth, and it is interdimensional portal type. But so I'm going to talk to you about the portal. And so some portals are like fixed, like sacred sites, or like in the more magnetic grid, like predictable places to go to. And there are also portable portals. So this is what I saw as you were talking about that, is this is a portal that is you, like it was been within you. But when you moved to this place, you kind of externalized it, or you like popped it out of your own field and built it in your backyard.
I got you.
Like that. So, because it's super like high level, or it's very trippy, whatever you want to call it, to like work the portals in you as you're doing it. It's nice to like chop them off and externalize them and have like a little laboratory, if you know what I mean. It's better for the human to have like, oh, there's a fairy ring, or there's a place out there. So I feel like
what you just said, I want you to keep going. I just got to say, you just are connecting the dots for me. You're actually right.
That's so Todd portal. You brought that there.
Yeah, when you said that, I'm getting, like I'm going to throw up. That's how strong this is.
But it's so that's you, that's your inner, like that's you installed it there.
Yeah. It reminds me.
I can say from my personal experiences here that now that you have this sacred site there in your backyard, like all you need to do is just spend time with it. It will teach you, like it's there as your instructor, if you will.
Yeah, you're right.
Like just to spend time, like you said, being out there doing the fire. When you're called, you go. And what do? It's like some might call it meditating. Some might call it. It doesn't matter what you do. Anything you do is perfect. Like you said, like you might get that, but the downloads come so what is a Stargate anyway, right? It's not like necessarily like the TV show where like the big ring opens up and it's like it's much more energetic and subtle. And like Stargates for me are these. Well, are you a computer coder a little bit in your background days, or are you more media? Anyway, it's like you're building code.
Yeah.
And it's an access point.
Yeah.
Stargates are a lot of things, but there are like, you said you were talking about this like interdimensional flow.
Yeah.
And you also talked about inner Earth, and we've been talking about the North Pole. So there is this in the traveling corridor. It's said that the North Pole, be it of your human self or the planetary body, maybe of the galaxy, is that torus flow is like there's a central column, right? And that central column, as the torus comes in energetically, is that internal, is the wormhole.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a travel corridor / light corridor / information stream. Like it's all
God
happening.
You're making me like I feel like I'm gonna throw up. Yeah, this is coming in so strong.
So what does it have to do with Aldebaran, though?
Huh? What does it have to do with Aldebaran?
Do they come together sometimes?
No, I'm telling you, this thing is like everything. Like I can't even explain that. But okay, so there's two things. One, I love what you said, because you know how you get a download and then you start to talk about it and you have that thought in your head, like, am I making this up? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's that type of connection about what you said. I created this. I get what you're saying. And it's not, I don't think it's even something that can be explained like at a human level, but I get what you're saying. The Aldebaran thing, I don't know. I just know that when I woke up,
let's go back. So let's go back to your portal thing though. But is that like, and so maybe you brought some key codes back with you from Sedona. Like you have the codes within you.
I don't,
like that when you talk about unlocking the cap, or like
it definitely feels like this is a central point. Like I know I've walked through here because I've had many memories and visions, a lot of indigenous stuff, and we're talking about like this was like a gathering place, like a highway, like Sedona itself served the indigenous in the past and still does now. They didn't live there. They would come there to have shamanic experiences and dream quests and all that. Holy shit. But anyway, so, so to me, there's a reason that I've come through here every year. That just doesn't make any sense. I'm homeless living out of a suitcase.
That you're, when you're doing building with light, and you're doing light code, and you're making, you can get like each pass that you do, you're building part of it. Like you might not have been your human aware of it. Yeah. But like pass bys, that happens a lot for me too. It's like and then that you put the pieces together of your life code and your life stream. And like, you've been to this place, been to this place, been to this place. There's a major hub and gateway here. That's a mill along it's a spot along the Blackstone River where a lot of rivers converge. And I kind of identified it by feeling sense. And then when I went there to go embody, I was like, I can't believe it's at this mill. And like rewind back like a decade, or maybe it was 20 years ago, I was there with some friends who are artist friends who were reclaiming some of the materials to make art projects for, in the industrial corridor, blah, blah, blah. But we were in there, and that was one of the first places where I've always had this sentient sense of talking through dimensions, but that was the first place I heard the footsteps, and I saw, like, we heard voices, and we were like, there was a few of us there that we were like, are you hearing and seeing what? And then we get to like corroborate for each other.
Yeah.
But when I like, it was almost like one of the, like, you can't make this up, like TV show wise. I was like, wait a minute, you're telling me that like 25 years ago when I was like, dumpster diving with my friends to find old spools of yarn and like different things to make this art project for, we were actually, that's like a layer of part of what I'm doing. And it like comes into grid work and gate work now. And like stuff like that happens. Like our soul is doing the work, or our light body is doing the work, or our, that's, so it's
the light body definitely feels like it's on. I get what you're saying. It's almost like you're just picking up where you left off. I feel like over here, for instance, because when I came here, I basically sat in a room and made music for 2 months. But at the very end, I went to this post Thanksgiving gathering of my sister that lived here, her friends, right? So when I went in, there was this whole thing came in. I had already been seeing it, but I didn't have anything to relate it to. It was these two factions of a coven. So there was this old lineage of these two opposing forces, like a coven. Is that what you call it? A witch's coven, right? I mean, and so that was all coming back. But what I was getting at is since then, there seems to be a lot of, I don't want to say resolution, but reunification energy in my personal mirrors, my physical mirrors in and around here. Whether they be someone who comes in from out of town or whether it be somebody that lives here that's become friends of mine. But, and it's, so there's something about that, what you were saying, like picking up where you left off, like you're always building up to this point, right? And then the other thing I was going to say, because you asked me, was the only thing I know, first of all, I've never even heard the word Aldebaran. I had to look it up because I kept seeing it. I thought, what the hell is that thing looking at me up there? And then I found out it was Eye of Taurus. But what had happened was I found that out after I woke up. When I woke up, I was awakened by these 6 masters that people might call biblical prophets or whatever. And these again were just faces. But they used to take me to this red orangish planet. And it was full of my family, which was mostly like orators and teachers, I mean, anyone from like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, to Gandhi, to Abraham, to Isaiah. They had this certain common thread that I identified with, and I understood that I was part of them or I'd learned in them. And I feel that it was on Aldebaran. Now, the only other thing I ever heard, other than my own stuff before I met you about it, because I remember asking you about it early on, was that in pre-World War II, if you research at all anything about Germany, there was the Vril Society and the Thule Society, and Hitler and his people were very much into the occult. And there was a group of, I think, 6 women, and they were communicating like many of us do. And Aldebaran was communicating with them, and Aldebaran guided them to take their information to the Nazis. And there's a lot of evidence that points towards this narrative that this is how the Germans took such massive technological leaps, right? And that's the only other thing I'd heard about Aldebaran.
Well, talking to stars and interfacing with star code is a whole, thing in itself, or art form or skill set. And, you talk about it like it was flashing at you in the sky. That's what you mean. It was like talking, it's like I think as humans, we're mostly used to dealing with light codes. When we say light codes, we think of stuff from the sun, the rainbow encoded light rays. Yeah. And then once we learn to talk with the sun directly through light code, it's like, oh, then like the next level out, if you will, is talking to the suns, the myriad of suns that we see in the night sky. So star codes, like there is like a Morse codey direct download to your light body. It just like it flashes. Sometimes it looks like disco light balls. It like spins, and then there's a quality that like if people that interact with light ships, it's like sometimes they're cloaked isn't the right word, but like disguised, or they'll like hide out behind, or they'll be part of the star. So there's like this whole like light ship is this geometric quality for me that's like it comes through the portal of that star, comes through the codes of that starlight. And like different stars have different transmissions and different information. And it's to the human self, it's like, it's hard, even hard to talk about or explain to people how to do that or what to do with that. But that comes through as just that encoded information. I've had myself last June, I had a very direct communication. I've had many of them along the way, but my most recent one was with Arcturus. And the amount of information, I'm still like a year later, I'm still working out how to even talk about that or share about it. It's coming. It'll be soon, but things take, for some of us anyway, it takes a while to like unpack the suitcase of the information, and then like you lay out all the pieces on the floor in front of you, and then you're like, well, how does this interrelate? And it's a long project. How about that?
I think it's that way for everybody.
Yeah. But your portal sounds super fun, and I look forward
when you come over here, you can.
Yeah, I would love, like, that would be fun.
I hope you're planning on coming.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on here? Test. Okay.
I can hear you.
There's a lot of weird stuff happening. I've been telling Morgan there's a lot of weird stuff happening over here, and I feel like that it's a microcosm of what's happening everywhere, and it's really strange because I've gone from and the portal's a perfect example. I don't go out of my way to dive into it because I know it's not time. I'm just allowing it, kind of allowing the, you mentioned magnetics a while ago. I feel a lot of that, but it's like the magnetics, you just allow them to come together, just like, anything.
Yeah. In my experience, it's a soul calling. Like you'll know when to go in the yard and do that. You'll know when to, even you be driving your car in another state, like you said. It's like but you can't, in my experience, it's not a human will.
No.
Oh, I'm doing this on this date at this time.
No, it's like an intel. You're going, am I making this up? Because it's like that subtle, right? But what I was going to tell you too was like one of the things that I got from there was about the stars. And so it was kind of like this, and I'm not saying this is what it told me, but it's close. So you have the one, which we might even call the central sun or something, the central core. Nothing else exists in this moment. And then boom, the fractals occur. And the fractals are the stars and the planets and the celestial bodies. And from those fractals, which I guess in essence are us. So, and of course it goes much deeper than the stars that we can see, because the stars that we can see probably have a history where they came from. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So basically a person or a group of persons can have a certain, identification or resonance with, let's say, Pleiades. And there's a lot of those because there seems to be a lot of, that basically we just keep extending ourselves.
Yeah. And it's like different soul groups code, like speak the language of different stars, like certain soul groups and certain.
Yes.
But we all represent lots of different soul groups, but like you'll have pings by your different, or some people call them soul aspects, right? It's like your different soul aspects will get pinged by different star codes at different times in different languages. And it's not you just got to stay with the flow of it.
I'm just thinking of something right now. So you're not coming on till the 30th of July. I think we should put another one in between.
Okay.
Because we need to talk more about, I want to ask you. So anyway, you want to just, actually, if you want, can you do Saturdays?
Sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes.
Look, well, just send me a note and we'll schedule it, because I don't want to.
Yeah, you can.
Again, this is another thing that's happening. These things come into you, and I'm just finding just to do it. Just go do it. Don't even go, and talk about it.
Yeah,
God, you were saying something though I wanted to come back to. What were you just talking about? Oh my God.
Different soul aspects and star codes and how they speak to us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The representation.
Like different languages, like different stars talk to different people. We all get the calls from stars in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't mean like, I can only hear from Arcturus because I'm Arcturian. Like there's a lot of identification that happens, but it's not. Yeah. It's just because you have like multiple soul aspects, star aspects in your field, and you can speak many different languages. Just like I'm not just Italian. I'm like Italian and French Canadian, and I
didn't know you were Sicilian too. That's cool. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. Like this is a big one. But I'm finding that really almost every day is beyond the day before. in a very clear way. It's weird. It's a lot like that magnetism that we were talking about, and it's just moving at its own pace, and eventually it's going to be like this and lock. But it's like happening over and over and over again.
Well, I'd love to come on and talk to you again. And I'm glad, like, everything we talked about is awesome. But of course, it wasn't any of the like content that I was bringing to share today, which is fine.
Well, I mean,
but there's a lot of big, I know you work a lot with what one might consider a masculine and feminine coding and the union of that. So there's a really big star alignment or planet alignment. Mars and Venus are conjuncting July 13th.
Mars and Venus, July the 13th.
So that's like a lot of people hold that feminine, masculine polarity. Like
Mars, Venus.
July 13th.
Crap! That's my mother's birthday. Too.
So my husband's
my dad's birthday is July the 20th.
Oh,
so that in the week span, you can't make this stuff up.
We were talking about the beehive cluster, and we'll just. I know you have another show at 4, right? So you got to like drink some water and go vomit, and then get back on your.
I wasn't going to vomit. Now you put it back in my head. I'm going to probably do it.
Okay, sorry. You clear your field. However, you need to clear your field. So 2 days ago, Mars. So there's this thing where Mars and Venus, the beehive cluster, the moon, the sun, Mercury are all doing this dance in June and July. So we had Mars go through the beehive cluster. This is it's a pineal, pituitary, and much, much more activating star cluster that's over in the constellation of Cancer. And Mars went through on the 23rd. July 3rd, Venus goes through that star cluster in the sky as we can see it. And these are evening planets now. So you have to go out right after sunset, at least here where I live at my latitude. They're not up for very long. Like you can't see them anymore at midnight. They've set by 11 p.m. So it's a dusk thing. And like last night I went out to look at them at the full moon, and it takes a while to see Mars. Mars is only up for a little bit of time. But anyway, so there's Venus, Mars, and then they're going to come together after they both move through the beehive cluster. They're going to conjunct on the 13th. And then Mercury comes along and moves through the beehive cluster, and then the sun comes along, and the sun and Mercury conjunct. There's just like a lot of stuff buzzing. So the beehive to me goes a lot with like the skull and the upper registers and the upper chakras and portal and like, the hair thing. There's a lot of like buzzing going on in the upper.
Yeah, there is. Actually, the whole body, but the head, the head's been like really lit up. Really has. Oh, look. I get 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th are all wide open.
All right.
12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. Or
in there.
Okay, just pick it live. Just pick it, huh?
Let's do the 12th, the Monday.
Okay, and you want to do it at 2 o'clock your time, or is that too late?
Perfect. No, that's great.
Okay, 5D. Yeah, because we need to talk about. That's what I was going to ask you. Okay, hang on. We won't be able to get into it, but I was going to ask you. Have you heard of astrotheology? Like Jordan Maxwell, I think Madame Blavatsky. There's others, but. And I think there's astrotheology, astro something, I can't remember, but there's some type of, and I know you're familiar with this, and it's probably, but like there's just this relationship between, I guess you could say, the celestial bodies and the movement of the bodies that's really unarguable. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know. I just think that it's important that relationship, because it's been segmented and splintered, like, astrology, astronomy, and everything in between, is something that we're supposed to explore. And you seem to be the person to do it. You know what I mean? So
what? Say the name of it again. Is it?
Well, so Philly Pan put up Theosophy. That's actually
that's Steiner's.
Yeah, but yeah, astrotheologists, Santos Bonacci, Jordan Maxwell. There's a lot of people that have talked about this relationship between the stars, their connection to the mythologies, their connection to our histories. Just really, really much more wide in its code and than somebody might think.
Yeah.
And so
it's interesting. I do know, like the like the Steiner and the Gurdjieff and the Sufi, and there's a lot, right? And it's just like I've definitely delved into a little bit, but I personally like to, some might call me a cherry picker, but there's like, it's so like to pick from different schools of thought rather than like conform to one. There's so much dogma in some of them, and there's some of them we're outgrowing some of that, but I'm not like, so it's like, how do we get right through? It's like what you and Hung and I were talking about. Like there's so much story encoded in all that. Like all of the, like for me, like I work so much galactically, but I steer clear of all of the stories and the wars and the narrative.
I agree with you. Yeah, because because they're like
it's the old paradigm. It's like, what are we doing that's new? But I'm not saying that somebody it's too bad we can't see the comments as they go by.
Oh, you can. You can. I can pull it back up. You can. You said that. Which one are you talking about?
I haven't. Yeah. He buzzed by my field in the Soulogy thing, but I didn't get to look at his work. But his name, my maiden name is Benici, and that's not the same.
Oh, you're talking about Santos Bonacci.
But I was like, that's the closest name to my name that I've,
Yeah, he's been around quite some time, and they also mentioned Gigi Young, and I checked out her stuff on YouTube, but they just tend to be too long. I can't really I can't stay with her because they're always over 3 hours. But so there's a lot of people out here, and the reason I brought it up is because what you bring to the table isn't really, in my opinion, pigeonholed in any of these categories. It is more of a cherry picker kind of thing, and it's new. I don't see people having the type of connection and through that connection expressions, be it post or the other stuff that you share. I don't see that out there. And I'm sure there's others out there that are doing the same thing with you, that are working in conjunction with you, in the ethers. But I just think it's important. And we talked about this before, and I made a joke, well, you're the Soulogy cosmologist, but I really feel like this is important, that relationship, because if you go back and look, like, for instance, like the Dogon tribe, there's other tribes that, we came across them in the 20th century and like, how the hell did you know there's a Sirius A, B, and C, and all this different stuff. So obviously there's a connection there. And the problem, to your point, the problem is that through each phase of our evolution, there was certain nomenclature, certain semantics, and certain metaphoric descriptions that were attached to what I'm talking about. And so you're right, because what happens is, as you go down the line a little bit, then they start to lose their context unless you're like an etymologist and you really dig deep. So I think what you offer is that non-dogmatic, non-doctrinal type of information and code that's kind of been stripped down a little bit. And I think it's important to talk about.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. Like, we're all doing it too. It's well, not all, maybe, but there's a lot of us doing it right now too, in that when someone has one of these experiences of connecting with the all, or talking to Galactic Father, or talking directly to God, Goddess, Godhead, do you then codify it and put your spin on it and then become, there's this ego creation of becoming the intermediary, be it a guru or a teacher, or I'm going to establish a methodology. And like, for me, I'm very much not about like establishing a methodology, but being a key holder to help other people awaken their own methodology. It's like, why don't we go out in our own backyards and pop out our portals out of our inner space and put them in our backyard and play and directly download the information. And it's fun when we come together and talk about it, because how other people code and how other people do things gives us, I'll try that. It's like we cross spark each other and cross code. But I haven't, and I've gleaned so much information over the years. But for me, I don't go down too much any of those paths because they're somebody else's construct.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'd rather just grab the information, strip down, and then play with it myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense. No, well, no. Look, Hung was talking about this at the beginning when we first started talking, before you came on, and it was in the regard to, I forget why it came up, but basically what it was having a discussion like this, and she was talking about how we're moving away, with the vindication and the right and wrong. In other words, having a conversation or being in a field or constructing a field of openness where this stuff can all be laid out there, as opposed to somebody, it has to be right.
Well, it's a little, can I comment? I don't know who Philly Pam is, and maybe she's putting comments of like getting a little, we're not saying anything bad about Steiner or like that construct isn't beautiful or whatever. It's like, but it's like, can't we all, maybe we've moved into like a direct source code. And if I have a limited amount of time in a week, am I going to read books by somebody that somebody else wrote? Or am I going to go out and be in nature and directly download the source code myself? Right. It's like not speaking ill of anyone else's, and other people might have different pathways of like, yeah, sure. It's like, it's not knocking anyone else's that they've done that. No. So many different people out there that want to read things. It's just like, people have different ways of accessing information. And for some people, it's watching a YouTube vid, and some people it's reading something, and some people it's laying on a blanket under a tree.
Yeah.
It's all,
well, and I think that
the same,
Yeah. And I think that the clutter or the traffic in the field, in our fields has cleared. It's clearing. Like it's you can call it because the yuga cycle's over, or you can call it because we've done zero pointing or shadow work or whatever you want to call it. But it's like there's less of that going on. And so that's allowing us to be two things for me. One is it becomes more of a simple path. You don't have all these complications because you got all these different things going on. And then the other thing is it brings everybody down. When you start closing doors, now you're in a field where there's very few doors left to close. And so there's obviously going to be more unification and more oneness. You don't have anywhere else to go, but so we're going to do that on the 12th. Is that what you said? Yeah.
That's what we said. Yeah.
We'll talk about it. Well, we talked about before. It's just things have to come in their time. I want to make sure that we consistently put out what you have, because we haven't even, like, you've been on the show quite a few times, but we haven't even really scratched the surface. I mean, your stuff is pretty unique and also very comprehensive. So I could see, it's important. I can see it for what it is. Yeah. Well, I see it because I know my role just from the soul lineage and even the human lineage. I'm all about producing the information that's there, packaging it as unbiasedly as possible and putting it out there in its purest form. And so I see a lot of new, and one of the reasons I notice it, and you're a great example, is I'm sitting here and I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm a pretty smart guy. And so I'm listening to you over the episodes we've done, and I'm having to really pay attention to stay with you, because you've got such a massive amount of information, and it's unique and new to me anyway. But I noticed that the field of people hang on. They are attracted. They magnify to it, and that tells me something in my work. I've seen that before. Kind of like the Amanda Smith show.
Yeah. Have you talked to her since she came on? No, I know you're saying, like, has she gone back and watched it? I'd love to hear.
She did. She went back and watched it right away, and she totally got it. Like, she shared it. I'm telling you, that's a perfect example, because you see people attached to it. And when they do that, because it's so pure, that consciousness just grows. Like, it's weird. It's just so fucking weird. All right. So I guess I better go take a wee.
Thanks everybody for
We'll get some-
hanging in with us through
I'll
our
see
circuitous
you in
quantum flow.
Yeah, I'll see you in 17 days. That seems like a long time. We'll talk about it.
All right. Thank you so
yeah.
much, Todd.
I appreciate you. I love you. I hope
you.
you come to Arkansas in September and
Yeah.
we do some of the things that we talked about doing. Yeah, we do some of the things we talked about doing because
small scale.
that would be a great what we talked about, like like walking the grid and walking and going to these sites and then learning about cosmology and all that stuff.
Super fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Love
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Best you. Okay. You take care. Oh wait, let me fix this. Am I still on?
Yeah.
Ma'am?
You are.
Let's see.
We're still live.
Okay.
Goodbye.
You take care. I love you. Best to your family and everything.
Thank you.
Okay.